So the question of today comes from a mail actually, and this gentleman over here is asking, I've been boxing for some months now and I'm pretty nervous about the competitive side of things. I will have my first fight soon. I'm not a natural competitor, but I'm eager to learn. Do you have any tips for building confidence in the ring? Okay, first of all, my friend, there is no such thing as not being a natural competitor. The reason you even exist today is because of competition. Competition is in life in every aspect. You were competing against millions of sperms to even take a breath today. And when you apply for a job, you're competing against other applicants. When you apply for school or university or any program, you're competing against other applicants. When I am sitting here talking to you right now, I am competing against other content creators for your attention. So no, competition is life. It is within us. It's human nature. It is biology. If you go to the savannas of Africa right now, you will find two animals competing for a meat of loaf. Is that a good or a bad thing? It's good, of course, because it enables us to survive. It is survival. But we can choose what we want to compete in, and that is a good part about it. We can choose to play the game or not play the game. Some tasks will be more important than others, and I guess for you the task of boxing is important because you want to compete in it. And now to the point of the video. What you're experiencing now, my friend, is known as performance anxiety. And this is a very normal thing, and it is completely situational to the individual and the task. There has been some theories on it. We have the drive theory, which means that there is a linear relationship between arousal and performance, meaning that the more anxious you are, the more or the better you will perform. And this was later challenged, saying that anxiety or arousal is only good to a certain point, and then the rewards will decline. And this was also challenged, meaning it was too vague, so then came the zone of optimal functioning, which says that it is completely contextual. It depends on the individual, their makeup, the situation, and a bunch of other factors. But to be honest, to hell with those models, because the last thing you need right now, preparing for a boxing match, is more scientific models about anxiety and what it actually is. Let's focus on the action steps instead, what we can do to deal with the anxiety and to use it to our advantage. And that will be the purpose of this video. And the first tool that I want to give you is actually negative visualization. It sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out here. I want you to imagine the worst case scenario that's going to happen now that you're competing in this boxing match. Imagine you have prepared for months now, you have gone through all the techniques, everything, and you actually go in there and you get knocked out. You lie flat on the canvas, you wake up to a bunch of blinking lights, people screaming and going crazy over you getting knocked out. Imagine the ride home where you're disappointed, probably crying. Imagine the way in, looking at your opponent from the distance, seeing that his arms are pretty big, he looks a bit intimidating. Imagine all of those things. Once you have done that, I want you to get really comfortable with the prospect of that happening. It sounds counterintuitive, but oftentimes it helps us to visualize the worst case scenario and get really comfortable with that happening. Once you are really comfortable with that, you can focus on what's within your capacity. Now, the purpose here is not to go in and deliberately get knocked out. The purpose is to visualize the worst case scenario so that when you are there, that fear is gone and you can focus on what you're supposed to do. So now that we have the worst case scenario out of the way, let's focus on what is actually within our capacity, and that is preparation. There is a lot of reasons of anxiety as we went through once again, but probably the most common reason in sports context at least is fear of the unknown. We do not know what's going to happen, and this is completely natural. So, to combat this, we need to prepare in the best way possible and be ready for every single scenario that might show up. And this comes to your preparation, your training. How is your training looking like? Are you going through every conceivable scenario in your training when it comes to footwork, head movement, jab? Do you have good defense? Do you keep your chin down? Are you attentive and focused when you spar? All of those things need to be in line, like you need to have good preparation. Create a list and go through every single aspect of your preparation when it comes to the strength and conditioning, when it comes to the tactics and skills training, when it comes to the technique training, when it comes to the nutrition, mental aspects, psychological aspects, and evaluate how good you are in all of those aspects. Which brings us to the backbone of everything else, your environment. Do you find yourself in a good and competent environment? Are your teammates as enthusiastic about this? Are they competitive? Do they have a winning mindset, a winning culture, so to speak? Is your coach empathetic? Does your coach care about his athletes? All of those things has to be assessed. If you find yourself in the correct environment, usually everything else gets put into place. This is the backbone of everything else. Once you have that, the rest comes down to basically mental training and preparation, and there is a couple of tools for this. A very age-old method is actually affirmations, which is that it can be done in many ways, but one simple way is simply to open a document on your PC or grab a notepad and just write things day after day after day when you wake up and first thing before you go to sleep of things that you want to remind yourself about. You can write things such as, I love pressure, I compete good under pressure, I have a very good jab, I have very good head movement, I accept my emotions, whatever emotions comes to me, I look at it non-judgmentally and I let it take its course of action. I love competing, I love my sport, I have fun competing in my sport, I am out on a mission. You can use whatever you like that applies to your situation. Try to not make it too irrational, make it realistic to the foreseeable future. And then of course, previously we went through negative visualization, being comfortable with the worst case scenario. We also have the productive, any visualization is productive, but here the visualization is about what you want to do. When it comes to visualization, some works have suggested that actually the brain does not do a good job of telling the difference between fantasy, like imagination, and reality. Because in the brain we see things as pictured. And there has actually been some works that have suggested that mental rehearsal of things are actually very similar to the act of doing that task in reality. Like you build the same neural connections. So visualization is a very important task, especially for unknown things that you have not done yet. Imagine the car ride or the plane trip to the competition. Imagine when you find yourself in the training facility, you see the crowd, you see the weigh-in machine, you see your opponent, you imagine the announcer on the microphone announcing your name, and you go into the ring, you stand there looking in front of your opponent from the distance, you see your opponent's coach, the medical doctor, the judge, all of those people. Imagine those things. And then the fight begins. Imagine you going in, you're controlled, focused, almost in this cold-hearted inspector mode, just following the game plan that you and your coaches have been working on. You have your guard up, you're jabbing, you're moving out, you're avoiding getting hit. Imagine bad scenarios also, like you get hit and rocked. What are you going to do then? Imagine both good and bad scenarios and how you're going to solve those things. 10 to 15 minutes every day will do you wonders about this visualization. The task itself is no secret. It has been done for a long time, like since the beginning of civilization probably. The difficult thing is to actually implement it. Build it into a routine so that you are doing this every day. So those are some mental tools that you can implement when it comes to your preparation. It is the physical preparation, which is done in your training, and the mental preparation, which you do yourself. And this next method actually comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, more popularly known as cognitive reframing, which is actually seeing things in broader perspective. There is many approaches to this, and it varies between individuals. But one approach is to realize how short life is. That you and everyone else one day are gonna die. We're gonna cease to exist. I know it sounds a bit dramatic here, but hear me out here. Every single philosopher, whether we're talking about the Greek philosophers or Nietzsche or Albert Camus, they have emphasized mortality and getting free from mortality and death, in other words, to live the life we want to live. Realize how short life is and that your anxieties are not always in line with the consequences of what you are thinking about. Knowing that your time here is limited, do you really want to give in to all of the anxieties here that are going to prevent you from doing what you love doing, what you want to do, what you have fun doing? It's going to be fun, you know. There is something, obviously, the boxing competition, it brings you value in some way, or any other venture that you have. So is there a reason not doing it? Is there a reason to let anxiety prevent you from not doing that? Think about it in this way. And the last thing I want to talk about today, which kind of falls into the category of so simple that it is often disregarded. And that is actually allowing yourself to feel the emotion. It sounds so simple that it is often disregarded. Oftentimes, whenever we are met with an emotion, we try to distract ourselves, think of something else, try to be positive, kind of toxic positivity. But next time you are met with anxiousness when preparing for something, try actually becoming anxiousness. Wear the mantle of anxiousness. See the texture of anxiousness. Become one with it. Because anxiousness, or fear, it is actually there for a reason. A self-protective reason. And it's like a baby that wants nurturing. You have to nurture this emotion. You cannot be combative about it. I think this was discussed in the book The Myth of Normal, and they compared an emotion to one of those balls that you have in a beach. You push down the ball in the water. What's going to happen? It's going to take a tremendous amount of effort, and then when you release it with the exact same energy you used to push it down, it's going to come back to the surface again. So it takes a tremendous amount of effort to repress an emotion, whether that is anxiety, sadness, or fear, or anything else. A more plausible solution is to actually be mindful about your emotion. Let it take its course of action. Become one with it. Don't even observe it, just become the emotion. Now, this has been used throughout history, like this method. It's nothing new. It's only until recently we actually have concrete scientific evidence behind it, and it is often put under the label of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So, I'm going to now provide you with some practical steps to take, and you can approach those in a way that suits you. Just stay tuned for this next picture here. Thank you for watching.